that she is continuing to have contact and some form of relationship with the person she cheated on with. Like, that doesn't work for me. Like, and she doesn't have, immediately I would counsel against that. Like, part of the contrition and the repentance, so to speak, of trying to rebuild the relationship and restore trust is to give the other partner who is the victim no reason to be concerned. You cease and desist all of those behaviors which the other person identifies as problematic, and I would imagine that her counselor was never okay with that. I mean, if so, I want that counselor's number because we gotta talk, man. That's way off base.
And it's possible that there could be some kind of explanation behind this, isn't like maybe they work together or something like that.
Sure.
But still, I think there's got to be some really firm boundaries. If she wants to save this relationship, save this marriage, you got to do the work to save it.
Yes.
And that means you're going to have to change some behaviors, and that means maybe cutting some people out.
Yes. So item 1, just burner phone aside, the fact that you know that she's still having conversation, I believe is problematic. I believe it's preventing healing. I believe it stands in the way of you guys having post-traumatic growth. And I think that it leaves a lingering doubt that this is ever going to be restored. Now, when you add to the equation, oh, and by the way, she has a secret phone that I didn't know about, yeah, it makes it twice as bad. And this is where the author is saying, I want to confront her about this, but Nick, he's afraid to because he's been caught snooping in the past. And we know that that's a pattern.
Sure. And I guess from my perspective, I'm thinking, so what?
Right.
At this point, I think, yeah, shame on you for snooping.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the issue.
Yeah. You know what? I'll take my lumps. Yeah. I almost think that this guy should come, because I think what I sense is that the writer is afraid that he's going to come to his wife, who he calls N, and he says, listen, I found this burner phone. Are you still cheating on me? Are you still having conversations with this guy more so than I'm aware? And he's afraid that she's going to say no, and shame on you for snooping, shame on you for not trusting. Now I'm the victim and you're the bad guy. And so I can see where he feels like he's in a catch-22. Yeah. But it's hard to find a good reason to have a burner phone.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. So the absolute worst case scenario for our writer, if you approach her and you confront her about this, and if you are 100% in the wrong, then there still has to be some kind of justification for keeping a phone in the spare tire well.
Yeah, and you know what? You will never have been so grateful to be proven wrong. I mean, if you can come to her with this and she goes, oh, no, that is a burner phone because I am secretly in witness protection.
Yeah,
my father was in the mafia.
Drugs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm a drug dealer. No, but Nick, you bring that up, and I want to come to that. As an addiction specialist, this sounds familiar to me. Yeah. When somebody says, hey, listen, I know I used to, because a lot of spouses and families will describe having a loved one who's addicted to something as if they are cheating, right? And they'll say, he wasn't cheating me with a woman, but he was cheating on me with the drugs. He needed the cocaine, he needed the alcohol, and he would lie about it. And then if he kept some kind of casual relationship with that, I would have a problem with it. But then whenever you suspect a relapse and you think that you found the paraphernalia that indicates that your loved one may have relapsed on the drug, and then you're like, well, do I confront them with it, or are they going to say, no, that's old paraphernalia, that's not current, I forgot that was there, I'm totally clean, but I'm shame on you for snooping on me, shame on you for not trusting me. You know what, now I am angry at you, now I am going to relapse because I'm so upset, and I can see where the person feels caught in between those two extremes.
Yes, I can see that, but I do think, though, that part of that is just a distorted way of looking at it.
Yes.
You are not responsible for somebody else's behavior.
That's right.
When you found that phone, you were not snooping per se. I mean, it sounds like you were helping her.
Yes.
Right? I mean, so...
You have a good explanation for why you were in that compartment. Right. There's not a good explanation for why a burner phone is in the spare tire area.
Here's the other thing, too. I went to this training once where this guy came up with this equation. It was a math equation for trust, and it's brilliant. I love it. It's T equals C plus P over T.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, trust. Trust equals C plus P over T, which is consistency plus predictability over time.
Okay.
And this behavior, even if even if there is some some logical reason why there's going to be a burner phone, the behavior is not consistent and it's not predictable. If she wants change, these are not the behaviors to be eliciting. Right?
I agree.
These are not the behaviors to be demonstrating.
That's a really good point. And I think this does come back to trust. If I have a couple who is surviving an affair, one of the first things, I'm literally looking at a book on my shelf right now that speaks to this. The very first thing that you have to have whenever there's been an affair is a restoration of trust. And there's an entire process of how this is done. And this comes from Gottman theory, actually, which is a marriage and family therapist. And the Gottman theory is that the very first thing you have to do is take off layers so that we have transparency again. And the victim party has permission to be crazy for a while. They have permission to snoop. They have permission to have their trust restored, and permission to be hypervigilant, because that's something they're probably going to do. They've been traumatized, they've been broken. And the offending party has to acquiesce to that. They have to give themselves to the restoring of trust and be allowed to be inquisitioned as often as possible. Mm-hmm. And we see this in addictions too. Yeah. I have the right to do a P-test on you if I think that you're using, and that's not offensive to you. You're the offending party. Right. You're the one that has something to prove, not me.
Right.
And then the second thing, though, that I hear in this question that I just want to bring back to the writer is, one of my rules is inspect what you expect. Okay? You expect faithfulness. You expect that this is no longer a threat to your marriage. It's time to inspect to make sure that that is still true. Mm-hmm. You have every right, even if you had snooped and found this phone in her work bag or in her nightstand, I would say that you still need to bring it to her forthrightly, and that you are completely justified in that. And if she tries to make this your problem, that is actually a manipulation. We call that gaslighting. And that makes you feel like you're crazy for doing what is a reasonable thing to do in the situation. She is the offending party. She has something to prove. I would encourage you to confront her. Mm-hmm. Maybe with a therapist. If you feel like you're out of your league and you feel like you want a third party, go back to that counselor and then confront her there with that truth.
Yeah. I too would say this needs to be addressed. You need to confront her about this. And I wish I had some words of encouragement, some like, it'll be okay. But this isn't looking good. Prepare for the worst.
Nick's absolutely right. You have to prepare for the worst, and I don't want you to be discouraged, though. You have to be bold. You have to be brave. This is a scary situation, but I want you to confront it with integrity and with authenticity and seek the truth. Inspect what you expect, and no matter what, you will be grateful that you did. That is the right thing to do without question. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about whether or not you should force somebody to get help for themselves. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
And we're back. Welcome back to Pod Therapy. Our writer writes in, do you think making someone get help actually helps them? My friend is an addict with over-the-counter medications, and her boyfriend is making her get therapy for drug treatment, or he's threatening to leave her homeless. I personally don't think this will help her because she's been through all this before and was even assaulted in a facility and has been abused sexually her entire life. I have no experience with what she uses, but I know it's unhealthy, but I don't think she wants to stop. What can I do to make her feel comfortable and make her want to stop instead of being forced by her boyfriend?
Gosh, Nick, we see this all the time.
Yep.
And a lot of people that are afraid to stand up to somebody because they think it won't help. But, I mean, my first reaction to this, you'd be surprised that the only thing that makes people stop is whenever other people allow them to experience the consequences of their actions. If you don't allow that, or you assist them to not have to experience discomfort or pain, we call that enabling. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that a lot of family members struggle with. And there's actually research that supports this, because this is something that has been studied a lot in the past. This is not a new question. You know, does court-mandated treatments work?
Right.
And that has been studied, and the results have been yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it can be effective. And obviously, everybody who comes into treatment for addictions, there is nobody that comes in there with completely internal motivation.
Right.
everybody comes in there because they are being chased by something. They all come in because they're afraid. And that could be fear of losing a job, fear of losing their life, fear of getting a divorce, or, fear of going to jail. But everybody comes in based off of fear. It's our job as the professional to turn that fear around into something positive. And I would agree. I mean, the main argument here is that the person has to want it for themselves. That I would absolutely agree with. If you're going to have long-term recovery, you have to want it for you. But that doesn't mean that that's where you need to start before you get into treatment. As a matter of fact, I would go so far to say that most people, if left to just make the decision for themselves, will probably die before they put themselves in treatment.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think you're right about people running. And I think that fear is actually a very fair motivator. I think the reason that people get treatment is the same reason most of America wakes up and goes to work every day. I don't think they're going to work every day because they're so passionate about what they're going to be doing. If you work at the library and you're like putting books back on the shelf every single day, I don't think you're waking up every morning like, boy, I can't wait to do that. I go do that because I like the food that I buy with that money. And I don't like being hungry, and I don't like being homeless. And so for this person, if her boyfriend doesn't enable or doesn't impose consequences, he's essentially permitting the behavior. And so I actually agree with the boyfriend in the scenario.
I do too.
He's standing up to this person. And the friend is saying, but I don't think my friend wants to get clean. Hey, guess what? I agree with you. She does not want to get clean. You're probably right. But you know what will help? Whenever she doesn't have any options. If her options are the street or treatment, she's going to have to go to treatment. And if she goes to treatment, she's got to play by Nick and I's rules. And Nick and I's rules involve a slow and careful analysis about everything that led her to our doorstep. And that's where change can begin.
Yeah. The metaphor that I always like to think of when thinking about addiction is I kind of picture a war. Think of like the Revolutionary War, where the two sides would meet up on the battlefield, and you've got one side or one country on one side, and you got the other army on the other side, and they slowly kind of march towards each other. And it's like you've got your recovery people who are fighting for you, and then on the other side you've got your addiction. And everybody's got to choose a side. There's no middle ground. You can't play both sides. When we have a client who comes into treatment, we make it very clear, hey, we are fighting your addiction. We need you to be on our side fighting your addiction. If we show up on the battlefield and you're on the other side with your addiction, we're going to lose. We can't fight both you and your addiction.
That's really well said.
Yeah.
And I think that life itself is opposing your addiction.
Right.
If you're on that side, you're going to continue to experience pain and consequences because the entire world and all of karmatic universal history desires for that side not to win.
Yes. And the other important thing here, too, is that it's not just the addict themselves that has to make the decision on which side they're going to fight on. The friends and family have to do that, too. And you can't straddle that. You can't be, no, I really think you need to be clean. Oh, but I don't think it's right that they threw you out on the street. Come live with me. I'll support you. You have to decide, and you have to say, no, I will support you as long as you are on the side of recovery.
I agree.
If you are on the side of addiction, I am not on your side.
There is no Switzerland in the war of addiction. You got to pick a side. You are either on the Allies' side or you are with the Nazis. But then the other point here that she makes, Nick, is she says, listen, my friend went to treatment, right? She went to a facility, and it was a negative experience. She came out of there saying she had a bad time, that somebody may have been unkind to her or maybe even assaulted her. And I'm rattled by that, and it makes me think, well, wow, maybe you're not supposed to go to treatment. Maybe that's not a helpful alternative to the addiction. What would you say to that?
My feedback to that, because that's something that caught my attention too, and I'm not going to say that every treatment center on earth is a great, wonderful place. I think ours is.
Right, I'm pretty proud of ours.
But ours is, I don't think every treatment center is like this. There are some bad treatment centers out there. There are some people who abuse the system. There are some counselors and therapists who shouldn't be working in the field. They shouldn't be licensed. And I'm sorry to hear that event happened. I'm sorry to hear that she was assaulted at a treatment center. There's never an excuse for that. That should never happen. that also can't be the thing that prevents her from getting help. I don't think, to use another metaphor, not that this